Understanding the external and internal factors and the impact of managers, understanding trends that impact organizations is of imperative importance to organizations, managers, and leaders. So this video describes some of the components of external and the external environment, and then talks about the impact on the organizational culture. First, we will describe organizational culture, what are the facets of organizational culture, and then how managers and leaders help to create that culture within an organization. Of course, we'll talk about the impact on organization performance also in the process. So we begin by talking about what are some of the main factors that contribute to the external factor really that we have to consider. One, and we see this in our society where we have political and legal components. So what political environment we're in, how does that impact organization? How does that impact trade, the demand for a product or service? Second, demographics. So we have seen the demographics in organizations change substantially over the last decade. Today, we have different ethnic groups, age groups, gender, everything. There's just a wide variety, much more than there were, let's say, 2 decades ago. We also look at the economic impact on the organization. So what's happening in the macroeconomy? What's happening within that particular industry? So if you're in airline industry, the demand for traveling is lower than it was, let's say, 6 months ago. What are some of the socio-cultural factors that impact the organization? And then technological trends and changes that are happening today. We also have to examine the global perspective, the stability, the trade factors. Again, political factors will impact the global environment. And so all of these factors, as we see, will have a substantial impact on the organization. Now, what does that mean for you as as a manager and leader? So there might be political conversations happening that will subsequently impact you as a manager within the organization, regardless of political points of view. Demographics. To what extent are we comfortable and have that expertise leading the different generations within the organization? Ethnic groups of employees changing, again, demographics are changing. So how comfortable and to what level of expertise do we have leading and managing the different demographics in our organization? These are critical points that we as managers have to consider as we develop policies, practices, strategies, and know that the expectations, the need of different employees will vary. So how do we consider all of those needs in making decisions in our organizations? Subsequently, we have to examine the stakeholders within our organizations. So we have the organization, the hub within the wheel, basically in this case. So you have your employees, first and foremost, employees. You have your customers. Without customers, you don't have a business. You have social, political action groups, competitors. Competitors are not limited to just our geographic area today, but because of the global economy that we're in, the competition, and subsequently the customer base will be global also because of the e-commerce. Government, media, suppliers, communities, shareholders, unions, as applicable, etc., are all stakeholders within the organization. So our role as manager and leader becomes imperative that, and from an organization perspective, we have to consider all of these facets and the impact on the organization. There's a huge benefit of knowing and valuing a good stakeholder relationship. We really cannot chastise one group and expect to gain trust and belief in the other group. So it's a holistic approach to understanding and valuing, respecting all of the different stakeholder groups that we have. So what are some of the benefits? We have improved predictability of environmental changes. So you have buy-in from all the stakeholder groups. You know that you would have established that trust, respect over the years. And if there are environmental changes, you would have that opportunity and ability to influence those stakeholder groups. As we pursue innovations in organizations, we will tend to be more successful. You have buy-in from employees, your customers, the suppliers. Again, the trust issue. And finally, the greater organization flexibility to reduce the impact of change and the resistance to changes within our organizations. All of this help to create what we call organization culture. That is the values, the beliefs, the norms within an organization. Of course, Enron, we remember the good Enron story. They had really good artifacts in their walls, but it was, uh, as you recall, it was just the most blatant violation of ethical, moral standards that we expect from leaders in organizations. So what we espouse and what we enact can be different. So hopefully that the shared values that we have, the principles, traditions, norms, the beliefs, the values there will establish the norm of doing business within an organization. So what are the generally accepted practices and principles that would help us? So that is organizational culture in a bottom line. The dimensions of organizational culture can include examples such as attention to detail, outcome orientation, innovation, risk-taking, stability, aggressiveness, all of those, team orientation. Another example would be examples of dimensions of organizational culture. I want to share with you examples. As you're listening here, I want to share examples of two companies. I have long followed Southwest Airlines as a company that has invested in culture and connected culture to organizational outcomes. So Southwest Airlines made employees a central part of its culture, meaning it valued, it was their former CEO who passed away in 2018 or so, Herb Kelleher. He viewed all of the employees as a large family and treated them as such. Of course, families will have differences of opinions and perspectives, but in the end, they're one family. And that has been the culture of Southwest Airlines. And you fly with Southwest Airlines, you experience that humor, etc. Again, the value there is about respecting, regarding the utmost regard for each employee and subsequently customers. At Tesla, as another example, the focus is on product innovation and risk-taking. Similar for Apple, maybe 3M, another example. At Target Corporation and GE, they had established key values that depicted their culture. Fast, fun, friendly used to be the values at Target as an example. So the culture comes into play. What do we believe in? What are some of the practices that enable us to identify who we are? So as we establish and maintain culture, basically it's the philosophy of the leaders, the founders, in some cases, what are the selection criteria that we would use that would help us to continue fostering this culture, the set of values that would be advantageous to our success as an organization. So it's reinforced by senior leadership and through socialization of individuals in values and practices. And subsequently, this helps to establish the culture of the organization. We have seen over time that culture will help to impact factors such as employee engagement. So we have similar values, and we will connect with that uh, set of values of the organization and subsequently the culture. Uh, we would tend to stay longer with that organization. So we would see employee retention being higher. And we know from studies that, for example, every 10 professional employees who leave the organization, it costs the organization over $1 million. And that is through direct and indirect costs. So the impact could also jeopardize customers' satisfaction if we have high turnover. So we established the point that an organization culture could subsequently impact engagement, motivation, the effort to pursue and fulfill, achieve the organizational outcomes is how we define motivation. And all of those, through the research, have established that there is a strong connection to employee and organizational performance. So by understanding, hopefully, the external and internal factors that we as managers and leaders within organizations can help to understand the impact, the relationships, and be able to develop practices and strategies that would help to create higher engagement, higher motivation, and a culture that fosters higher performance within our organizations.